there's something I wanted to share, and it's actually my dad's words. And when I think about, lessons that everyone shared in Te Hauo Makuru, I think about the influences on my life. And he said this, he said it, in one sense, all that we have to offer future generations is the past, containing as it does the hopes, the spirit, the determination of the people. They're a constant example of both virtue and error. But what a treasure chest that is. That is brightness enough to light the way ahead.
Nā koe Nanaia, e te tuahine e te rangatira. Tēnei te mihi atu, tēnei te mihi mahana kia koe. Nanaia, this is an opportunity for us to acknowledge the series that we've been a part of, Te Hauo Makuru, a series that you've been a big part of, and we acknowledge you in bringing this to us. So if I could perhaps start with just a general koorero to get to know a little bit about your early reflections in terms of this kaupapa of Raupatu.
Well, Raupatu has been quite a significant influence on our lives growing up, on the people that we observed that took us through some challenging stages in our tribe's history, but also in reaching settlements. So Te Hauo Makuru is the tribe's opportunity to story itself through our own narrative, our own perspectives, and look at our past with all its, I think, hopes and dreams and aspirations to inform what the future could look like. And I hope that when our mokopuna watched Te Hauo Makuru, we had a good shot of trying to story ourselves. We're only going to get better from here. But there's been a lot of learnings. And what I have observed from the various interviews that we've done is that our history is rich, our experience is deep, our learnings are many, and our challenges still lie in front of us. But because we're resilient and we have the capacity to look towards the future, I think we can be very optimistic about what that future holds.
Wonderful. You talked about hopes and aspirations of Raupatu. Can you share with us thoughts from our kaumātua and our kuia that were with us back then and what they had hoped would come out of this Raupatu settlement for us?
Well, I reflect on the panel discussions and with the grads, the rangatahi at the time who were mentored by kaumātua, and in all of their contributions, they all commented on the role that kaumātua played, that in fact they were the hopes and aspirations of the lessons they were learning. And even if you were thrown into the deep end and didn't know anything, you did it because you knew you had a strong backbone there. Those panels, discussions of our then rangatahi and now leaders really did share what I think we should maintain, which is a very determined intention to mentor, leadership planning and development and what that could look like, and treating every opportunity with the rangatahi around us to guide and teach, really, and show them what the characteristics of confident, good leadership looks like. And those grad discussions were absolutely gold from that perspective. I love some of the contributions around, many times where we're thrown into the deep end and that was the test about whether or not we were listening. Being kind to each other, having kaumātua as a backbone. Those are all the kinds of, I think, aspects of mentoring and experience that we would want to replicate going forward.
And those thrown into the deep end moments, Nanaia, and knowing you well, no doubt there were many of those. But from our kaumātua, were there any experiences where you yourself were put into those situations?
I think about when we had the Māori Land Court at Tūranga Waiwai, and probably because I got voluntold to do it, I got voluntold to present on behalf of rangatahi, and to be fair, I didn't know what I was doing. And I was listening to everyone's koorero, all the pakeke koorero and my father's, and then thinking, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to say. And then, I think there's a photo here in the college that's got a picture of me, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and very, very immature in my kind of just my sense of self reading this speech. And that was like one time where you just knew when the kaumātua said, go on, you do it, that you have to trust them even if you don't trust yourself. So that's a personal reflection of my own experience. And then when I think about the kaumātua having confidence to entrust you with kōrero, I think many of us have experienced times where you're driving someone to a kaupapa, paukai or a kaupapa, and then they give you history, they give you wisdom. And so I go back to the interview with Matua Tomboa and the wisdom that he has now that he's able to disseminate in ways that are absolutely not a straightforward answer, but the one of how he unpacks his sharing and his thoughts and his wisdom and his knowledge is, again, a gift that we should only replicate going forward when we become kaumātua. It's the best way to learn.
One of the things that we admired about you, particularly going back to the earlier days when we were new into the organisation as grads, and this wonder about your father in particular. And we would wonder often, what was life like for yourself and your sister and your brothers and your mum having to navigate this world of Raupatu and bring it to resolution? Give us some insight on what life was like for Nanaia Mahuta, the Mahuta family.
Well, let me kind of bounce from the reflections I got through Te Hau o Makuru interviews and then my own thoughts. I know that people who worked with him were in awe of him because he had the clarity of thinking, vision. He certainly had a strong character that you couldn't help but want to follow him and do things for him and help him to make things happen. And very much that strand of thought came through in the interviews, as well as, he was a man of his time. He could be very brittle in terms of if he knew that was the way to go, he'd be brittle about it. And he could feel brittle in his engagements on issues that were important to him, and Raupatu was it. But when I look at my own life experience around him, and, people will ask me, who was your mentor? And without a doubt, my father, my mother, Te Ariki Nui, they were all mentors to me. And what I observed about him was he was just a man who had a vision, and he backed himself every step of the way. He asked a lot of people, but he asked a lot of himself as well. So people were prepared to do more because he was hardworking. And I grew up with parents who had a very strong work ethic and were very focused. And once they pretty much all pinned their ears back and then said, that's the way we're going, that's the way we went. I can remember as a little family, we used to have very robust debates around our kai table. And, anyone who knows our family, my mother was a great cook, and she would make sure that we would eat at least one meal together every day so that we could spend that time unpacking and talking about each of our days and also sharing, challenges and things like that. So for mum and dad often, because work was everything to them, we would hear a lot of their conversations about Raupatu and what dad was trying to achieve, what mum was trying to do to help him. People not agreeing with the approach, and especially during those testy times of the negotiations and the conflict that we experienced with regards to political sentiment around the fiscal envelope. Those were all very robust discussions around our table, and I was at university at the time. And I can remember, these wanted dead or alive posters being pinned up at the university, and, you had Sir Graham Latimer, you had Tipino Regan, you had Dad, all kind of on these posters. And I would walk around the university pulling them down thinking, they don't know anything, And then I'd go home and I'd say to Dad, what are you doing? Why is this happening? What are you doing to my life like this? I personalise it deeply, but being a man of conviction, he just, again, pinned his ears back. He knew what forward looked like. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. And so I'm grateful because I've had that kind of clarity of leadership and grown up with that. And again, he had some flaws, but he had a lot of virtues, and those are the things that I kind of hold on to.
Mm. And were there any particular support people that stood out for you in that period of time?
Well, around Dad, definitely the old people, and there were many. I think about so many. Your grandfather, Koro George in the Te Rawiri, Kāpō, his wife, Waia Mauri o Hoho, and Auntie Sue, Taffy, and his wife, Koro, Moko Hamiora, and so it went down the generations of kaumātua who absolutely wrapped themselves around Dad. Pumi Taiteha was very much a steadfast supporter, as was Harepuke and Kāmera Hagi. And he needed that. He needed some counterbalance to his character, and they provided that because they were always very much aware of the things that he was too busy to be worried about. Mm. Needed to, but too focused on what the forward looked like. And they gave him just the right amount of steering power, capacity, to be able to understand the legacy of what he was trying to take forward that was laid down way before him. Way before him. Yeah, I think of Nana Miretaka. Now all the names are starting to come out. So there was that kahui of support of kaumātua, but then there were people, ringaringa waiwai, I would say, that did things. John Te Maru, Myrtle Te Maru. When I think of Joyce Paiko, I think of so many people that were just in his immediate vicinity. Shane, Newa, Tom, lots of people, Wayne Taitoko. They were all there to do whatever needed to be done, and then so it went. And the generations down from them, he grew as well. Mm-hmm. So nothing happens in isolation. I think he would be the first person to say, I didn't do this by myself. In fact, it was all done before me. I just showed them where what forward looked like. Don't look backwards. And I know that if he was here looking at us saying, okay, what's the next step? And he's going, well, it's that way, not that way. You just tell us to keep looking forward and move. We're in a different time. We've got different challenges. We've got new opportunities. But the vision of our tribe is to always maintain and sustain the kind of future that our kids and our grandkids deserve, because they are products of big dreams, big hopes and big aspirations.
Along the way, there have been some significant kaupapa and events and hui that had to be navigated to reach settlement and to get us on to this path that we're currently on. Are there specific events or something in particular that stands out for you as being a real focal point that I think shifted or enabled us to move into this space of treaty reconciliations?
Well, I think a lot of it has been as a result of contesting moments in time to say that this is important to us. So, for example, in the interviews, several people referenced the 1984 Hikoi to Waitangi. And, by and large, Waikato is a very conservative tribe. Going on protest marches and things like that isn't it really a Waikato thing? That would have been the first time, certainly in my lifetime, that the tribe mobilised to participate in a hikoi. But what that led to was Koro Wetere changing the Waitangi Tribunal so that historical claims could be heard. Mm-hmm. And then what that led to is the lodging of the the claim from here for Raupatu, but for the Waikato River. And then what that led to was basically a challenge at the tribunal for what the Crown was going to do with regards to Kolko, which is sell Kolko. And what that led to was our settlement. So these are all pinnacle moments in New Zealand's history where Waikato took action, where Dad was a part of, with those around him to say, well, hang on. We haven't addressed the issue of Raupatu. Hang on. So that makes you think when we tell our history about Tāwhao going to England, about Te Rata going to England to petition the Crown around the treaty, to us taking those other affirmative steps and then reaching settlement. Again, we have defined ourselves based on actions that we've taken to stand up for, redressing history and making sure that these things that form who we are essential ingredients, so we know who we are. But when I think of other things in the tribe's history, just over the last 30 years and what came out in the interviews, I think about, as a structure, where we started to where we are now, there's probably more to do in that space. I thought that the insights from Hayden Solomon's interview, for example, very insightful in terms of the concept of te kohanga nui originating from, within Ngāti Haua with the kohanga nui there, writing the rules, how that happened. I thought Shane's insights around the rules and tikanga and how that was coming into conflict with what our structure is there to represent, which is our tribal parliament. I think of Parikawhia's insights and the way that she talks about, the role of te whakakitenga and what it needs to be for our whānau, our marae. And then I think about the insights that were offered in other interviews that we have to have a structure fit for purpose. And I think, if I recollect, that's something that came out in Tuku Roirangi's interview. We have to have a structure that's fit for purpose, and we should be able to ask ourselves, are we there yet? And if we're not, don't be afraid of change. I think essentially that's, again, a part of our resilience success factor, and we need to embrace that.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's that element. The other things that you kind of allude to in the question, I think, make me consider the tribe moving from very much a transactional kind of space of just doing what we can when we can to being more strategic. So in Parikawhia's koorero, she brought out the fact that she was proud to have helped to lead through the thinking of Whakatupuranga 2050, having a long-term vision. Because prior to that, I think we had annual budgets and annual plans. But, and then Whakatupuranga came out in around about 2008, and she said that was one of her proudest moments of setting the strategic vision for the tribe up in a way where the governance role and responsibility of the tribe could be measured against that. And I would agree. I think that's a huge, huge success factor of being more strategic. And then simply the growth. We're sitting at 96,000 now?
Exactly.
And it's huge, and we are undertaking some significant economic collaborations. And while it's not all about the money, we need to be sustainable. We need an organisation that can help ourselves, strategic planning, an economic base. Probably the only other thing that I think is quite noteworthy across all of the interviews, which points to some significant moments, is there was a common theme coming through from most of the interviews that we needed to focus on mana motuhake. And when I pressed them on that perspective, well, we need to build the capacity of our marae or our clusters out in Aotearoa so that the centre, yes, is important, but it is not another version of a government.
Yes.
It's a different model again. So I think we probably could reflect on that as a challenge space for the future.
Because mana motuhake, in bringing that kaupapa forward, has that opportunity, dependent on who you're speaking to have different definitions, and it manifests itself in different ways. What do you think is some things for, I guess, ourselves as people from the marae, also from an organisation? You talked about the centre and that relationship between the centre and our marae, noting we're a marae organisation. What do you see as being areas that we should focus on as we look into the future and head towards the future of mana motuhake?
Well, I reflect on the interview with John Timaru and his recollection or his reflection that the centre is at the hub, but it's not the be-all and end-all, that the marae could do more. And again, that was reiterated through a number of interviews. And, you know, mana motuhake is about choice ultimately, that we have the capacity to choose, that no one makes our choice for us. And if we have the capacity to choose, common sense tells you we need more strategic alliances and collaborations, partnering to achieve our outcomes in place, which is often for when we talk about that, that's in and around our marae and our marae communities. But we don't do that in isolation. We do it with partners, with allies, and for, yes, the benefit of our whānau, but that'll translate as the benefit in our community. And then we can lead healthy, productive lives. Our kids can have choice. They can be global citizens if they wanted to, or they can contribute at home. And we weight the value of that contribution very equally, because as long as they're living an independent life full of choice, what more could we want? They have their language, they have their culture, they have good health, they know where they connect to, they know that when they are living their life, the taiao, they are connected intimately to their taiao. So you have to look after your taiao. And those are all the things, I think. And, you know, if by chance, you know, Te Rekinui spoke about that on the marae. What did she say? Tino rangatiratanga tia tō reo. Mana motuhake tia te taiao. Tino rangatiratanga tia tō haura. Mana motuhake tia tō pāharakeke. And I think that's a beautiful way of setting a challenge, but also an opportunity in front of us so that we bring that future closer to us. And I think it's a very hopeful vision that we have now to help set sail to the next place. Yeah.
One of the things that we're reflecting on throughout Te Hau o Makuru, the role of leadership and how that was quite a significant part of what was achieved in 1995. And many times there was reflections around Te Rekinui, Te Tairangi Kahu. And I guess as we look into the future, we think about our Rekinui, who beautifully, as you say, gave us some very clear direction and some hopeful direction. Thinking back to Te Rekinui, Dame Te Tairangi Kahu, and even with Kingetu Heitia, and now our Queenie today. The type of leadership that we will require, particularly as our young come through to be the new leaders and take these roles, what that might look like for us.
Well, there were 3 interviews that come to mind that spoke to this very specifically, and alongside the panel conversations with the young grads. That was Te Maipi, Tuku, Matua Tom Roa. And effectively, we have to be quite deliberate about how we mentor and support our young leaders so that succession is not by virtue of position or age. Succession is about having those lived experiences and the wisdom kind of feeding our generation to come, to be able to, I think, guardrails, but enough opportunity to test things out. I mean, the world we grew up in, you were thrown into the deep end and it was sink or swim, and most often you swam, And what's changed? I think there is more diversity in the learning experiences that our young people can have. Simple things. We were told, you go to school to get an education, then you more than likely, in our generation, we were the ones that were encouraged to go into university or teachers' college or tech to gain a skill and then get a job. But in our kids' world, I think they're more enterprising insofar as they're not thinking about education in a formal way of needing necessarily to go from secondary school into a tertiary sector. They could just as well go into a industry or a sector and learn on the job and then be the boss of their future. That's a very different proposition to the influence we had. So mentoring, in my mind, has to be a lot more diverse for them. We should think about more opportunities for internships across iwi, so we don't become too myopic in our focus that Waikato's got all the answers, because more often than not, we've got more challenges than answers. But that's us, that's who we are. And if our rangatahi had a chance to go into other iwi and experience other iwi and the opportunities they have, or into other sectors that might not be as familiar to us but are a part of our future. I think about the tech sector. Communication is going to be more and more important. In the whole storytelling space, it's a creative sector kind of that our kids need to know and understand. Tech, but also the taiao, because that plays to where we want to position ourselves as kaitiaki. I think there's a big whole sector of experience and knowledge that they could gain access to if we utilised our partnerships and our alliances as living experiences for our rangatahi to go there. We're doing it in the trades now, so we've got some muscle memory of how to do it, but we need to open the window to these other new areas of opportunity where our rangatahi see their future, and we've just got to understand what that looks like and leverage more, I think.
And yet earlier you talked about how our iwi has grown, I think, from 1995 in terms of our population base now being in excess of 90,000. And when we think about the growth of our population, where we're heading, the change, if we were crystal ball gaze for a little bit about what that future could actually mean for us, bearing in mind where we've come from, but knowing that time does not stay still and things will continue to evolve over time. Are you optimistic for this future that we're heading into in terms of where we've come from?
I am optimistic, but again, I continue to reiterate many of the messages coming through from Te Hauā Makuru. We have to know who we are. We have to be assured of where we belong by being connected to where we belong. We have to be confident in that, because that is the foundation, the tuapapa of how we then venture forth into the world. And, it's a bright world. It can be. It's got lots of challenges, but it can be a bright world because we have the capacity to be grounded ourselves. So hold on to our tikanga, hold on to our ahurea waikato, ahurea kengitanga. And, I think in terms of futures, the way in which we're thinking about our economic base, I think will shift towards our economic system. Will go back to what Tawhiao envisaged, which was an economic system based on care and responsibility, not the accumulation of wealth, so for wealth's sake, but so that we're reinvesting back into our pāharakeke, our whānau, in ways that are going to break some of those systemic challenges we've always had. Part of that relies on not what the tribe does, but what we do as whānau for ourselves. So we take control of some of those things we can control, and the tribe becomes an enabler, and the marae becomes a place to be able to actually be a greater enabler, because at its very essence, our marae is where we derive everything about who we are, where we belong, what's important to us. Yeah.
Te Hauā Makuru has given us insight into many lessons. Picking up on some of those lessons, are there some really key lessons across the interviews that came out in terms of our learning?
It's possible that I would have seen it because I did the interviews, but I think people wouldn't have naturally recognised it. But the generosity of people's insights and how they were seeing things, I think, shows us that we've had some hard lessons. We've had some unpleasant lessons, and people have been unkind. But the fact that across that range of experiences reflected in all the interviews, people recognise that we have the capacity to heal ourselves through this, I think is a big step. Raupatu, when we think about the mental anguish that our tupuna felt as a result of being dispossessed, and then what the successive generations learnt about disconnection. We're not farming people here in the Waikato, yet we've got the best fertile lands in the area. We're not farming people because we couldn't live on our whenua. All of that hurt has accumulated, but we've moved, we have the capacity to heal ourselves through that. And I think to me, that's what Te Hauā Makuru represents. By telling our story, by recognising the challenges, by telling that story and then recognising the learnings, our capacity to heal ourselves means our kids don't have to carry the weight and the baggage. And I think when I reflect on the interviews, I felt that Nanaia Mahuta spoke to that very well. And when I reflected on her saying that we have this capacity to heal ourselves, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we'll continue to do that, and we need to do more of it.
Yep.
Embed it into our way of doing things, that we're going to be a tribe that doesn't say that we're going to be kind. We're going to be doing the things that nurture us, that nurture the essence of who we are, what we believe in. And that's our kingitanga ethic. That's what I want to see us do more of.
Kia ora, Nanaia. Do you see that as an opportunity moving forward, that we continue with our stories, continue to share, continue to capture?
I think so, Tati, and I think that storytelling is going to be an important part of how we continue to live learn our experience in a way that, this happened, we can do it. Now, again, but to do it well, you've got to try and peel away to some of the mistakes and just say they were mistakes. If we can do that really successful, speak to some of the mistakes that were lived experience, we did the best we could with what we knew, and we learnt from it, then I reckon we'll be a more open and transparent tribe, and only more successful, because we are not shrouding anything over with innuendo or hidden agendas or things like that. And I believe our kids have the capacity to do that, because they're over watching kind of Game of Thrones type behaviours that don't serve any purpose except for a good movie. We're better than that, and I believe we can do that. So going forward with Te Hauā Makuru, that was a long way of answering your question, I think periodically, every 10 years, we should be doing not exactly the same, but we should be thinking about our story. How are we narrating ourselves every 10 years as we cross these milestones? And then in the long kind of timeline of how history is told, we're being very deliberate. Because right now we do it based on tungikura, but we've drawn on Tāwhiao's tungikura for how many generations? 7. We have one big tungikura that's been laid at Tūranga Waiwai at the Koro Neihana. We have to, as a tribe, have a narrative that helps to texture how we bring the tungikura to life, just like we've done in the past, but I think more of that. That's going to set us in good stead. Why does it matter? Because our kids are going to not just be bilingual, they will be multilingual, and they will travel the world. It's in our legacy, right? It's in the prophecies of our tupuna. So as they do that, as they become more immersed in other cultures and contributing, they can anchor themselves in their story. And that's that's kind of what I can see anyway.
Kia ora. As you were speaking, reminded me of in one of the episodes, and it was Shane Solomon's episode in particular, where he gave us some insight into the humanity and the transaction of the settlement. And it sat with me, and I've often quoted it in different settings now, and in different ways. But that sense of humanity, that sense of growing and learning and experiencing, and hopefully coming out the other end with a wisdom on how to move forward. And thinking about tongikura, are there any that really stand out to you as being quite poignant and something that you'd carry forward from te haua Makuru, or just in your experiences over the years to guide us forward?
Each tongikura has had a purpose for its time in order for us to reach into the essence of who we are, and also to draw hope and inspiration in times where the way is not clear. So each of the tongikura has as much relevance now as it did then. But I sense that the tongikura that another generation will draw on will be the one in Te Rekinui's first speech. And then they'll tāpiri to the other tongikura as a pathway. And that's a lovely, magical moment, because they have the clarity of direction that they deserve around the new challenges and intrepid waters that they will have to travel in order to find their way forward. But again, the tongikura provide is like a signpost to the legacy of hope and opportunity and wisdom that we can draw from. It's like a puna mātauranga.
What does being a good ancestor look like to you?
I think being a good ancestor is knowing that you're not in the driver's seat anymore and that you're in the passenger's seat, and that you allow, I guess, mistakes to occur. Or mistakes, let's say detours, to occur because it's necessary. And when I think about, actually it was a comment that John said in his interview. He said, maybe we needed to go through that. Maybe we couldn't have done it any other way. And he was talking about the challenge years of those initial 10 years moving from the trust board into the new structure, and the litigation that took place, and the contentious issues around what people were saying about Te Rekinui and my father at the time, and how people had to choose where they were sitting on that issue. And, he said, and I hadn't realised this, but he said, when we did all the comparative studies of all the other Indigenous experiences, they usually went through their road bumps in those first initial years of settlement. And he said, and we said, that could happen to us. They were talking about it and hoped it wouldn't, but it did. And I think I don't think we're immune to challenges. I think we should recognise when they happen and learn from them and talk about it, so that we know, are these challenges that have happened as a result of externalities, or have they happened because we've not learnt the lesson? And I would rather the first than them being repeated mistakes because we just haven't learnt the lesson. And that's why I think Te Haua Makuru provides us the opportunity to reflect healthily, in a healthy way, on our past, so that our kids don't have to have a repetitive cycle of things happening, and we're all participating for that reason, I'm sure of it. Oh, so final, you said, what's being a good ancestor? I would hope that being a good ancestor means that we are providing an environment where, I'll just speak as a mother, I hope that my kids will see that I've provided an environment for them to grow, prosper, thrive, have choice, be good people. That's it. And if they feel that they've had that, then I've been a good ancestor.
definitely on the way e te tuahine. Thinking of our children and our future generations. If you could sum up your reflections of this whole process, your reflections of all of that richness of koorero that has been shared with each of us through these episodes, through your eyes, the many beautiful words that were shared and given, and some of us are probably thinking, oh, I wish I could have said that a different way. But nevertheless, through your eyes, your reflections of the whole.
I think what stood out to me through, like if I weave the narrative together into one big korowai of koorero, what stood out to me is that everyone felt that the last 30 years contributing to the settlement and contributing to the tribe and contributing to kingitanga is an absolute privilege, and it's a legacy gift. And they hold on to key memories of why everyone does what they do. And those key memories go back to our whakapapa, go back to our kaumātua and our kuia, and the traits that they observed and the passion that they held in terms of very simple things, their whānau, their marae, the kaupapa, the kingitanga, and then people. So I think whakapapa and connection to all the things that come with that, connection to our marae, all the things that come with that, kaupapa, the kingitanga, and the connection to that. And then there's the other piece, what follows, our mokopuna, our tamariki mokopuna, and continuing to maintain and hope for a evolution and a growth within ourselves is all because we see this as gifting forward to our kids. And all of that is the korowai, I think, of koorero that came out. And we're better for it. And I would hope that to our whānau who might be watching this over in Ahitereiria, because we know there are many, we heard that, and further afield, to our whānau further away, there are going to be more and more opportunities to connect back. And we should do that so that, again, no matter where we are in the world, everyone will have a sense that they connect to something bigger than themselves and can contribute. And that's a special bond. And I think across all our iwi, but certainly within Waikato, we know that this is about our future. And this is an important part of that, is creating the narratives and the connections and the opportunities to connect with who we are, so we can walk confidently on te mata o te whenua.
Kia ora, kia ora. Is there anything that we have not covered that you think is important for us to share in this moment?
There is, but I'm going to have to ask for my phone. There's something I wanted to share, and it's actually my dad's words. And when I think about, lessons that everyone shared in Te Hau o Makuru, I think about the influences on my life. And he said this, he said, in one sense, all that we have to offer future generations is the past, containing as it does the hopes, the spirit, the determination of the people. They're a constant example of both virtue and error. But what a treasure chest that is. That is brightness enough to light the way ahead. And that's why I think when people watch Te Hau o Makuru, it gives everybody permission to reflect on the important things that have shaped our past, but not to keep looking back, keep looking forward, because the past helps us gain courage and take wisdom forward in a way that will, I think, give us more confidence to reach for the horizon, to reach for those things that will help make the next part of the journey even more successful. That's brightness enough to light the way ahead.
It's very privileged to sit here with you, to be able to have this koorero with you, to reflect on te haua Makuru, to be able to ask you some personal questions, and how privileged we are to be able to hear your words and speaking those of your Father as we consider what does our futures look like, where are we heading as an iwi, where are we heading as a people, and reflect on many of those tongikura that have been left for us. Use them as our guidance. Te tuahine, I remain in awe of you. Thank you for the privilege of bringing all of this koorero to us. I think it is a gift for our future generations, and I hope that it'll be an opportunity for them to continue to grow the resource into the future.
Kia ora, Tuti, thank you.